The interrogation chamber of Research Station Erebus had become as familiar to Fres Althoff as his own shell. 4 featureless walls of some material humans called null steel, a substance that absorbed and dispersed energy emissions of all kinds. 1 door, seamless when closed, operated by mechanisms he could not discern. A single light source embedded in the ceiling, always at the precise brightness that caused maximum discomfort to Fres' visual organs without permanently damaging them. And of course, the interrogation apparatus. A chair-like structure designed to accommodate a Fres body equipped with neural interfaces that could stimulate pain receptors without causing physical harm. The humans called it humane. Fres Althoff found the concept darkly amusing. There was nothing humane about this place. There was only the relentless, methodical extraction of information. 117 cycles. That's how long he had been held at this facility, buried deep within an asteroid in a star system whose name he did not know. 117 cycles of questions, neural stimulation, and the slow, inexorable dismantling of his psychological defenses. He had surrendered on Tarsus 4, yet had chosen preservation over pointless death in the face of the human sword-wielding warriors. But that was where his cooperation had ended. For all their technological innovation, for all the horrors of that flaming sword wielded by the black-armored human during the failed rescue attempt, they had not broken him. Not completely. Oh, he had given them some information, outdated deployment strategies, the names of commanders who had likely already been executed for failure, technical specifications for weapon systems that would have already been replaced in the Imperium's constant arms race. Enough to make them believe they were making progress, not enough to cause real damage to the Fres war effort. Not that it mattered anymore. From the snippets of information he had gleaned from his captors' conversations, the war was going poorly for the Imperium. The humans' integration of ancient melee weapons with advanced technology had proven devastating. Fres forces had been pushed back on multiple fronts, forced to abandon colonies they had held for generations. The Imperium's previously unshakable belief in its technological superiority had been shattered, replaced by a fear of human ingenuity that bordered on superstitious dread. The cell door slid open, and Fres Althoff's outer shell instinctively hardened in anticipation of another session, but instead of the usual interrogation team, a single human entered. Dr. Francine Cassan, the facility's chief research scientist. "Commander Fres Althoff," she said, her voice carrying the clinical detachment he had come to expect. "I hope you're feeling cooperative today. We have much to discuss." Fres Althoff remained silent, his sensory appendages drawn close to his body in the Fres gesture of rejection. Kazan sighed, a human expression of frustration he had become familiar with. "Still maintaining your resistance. Admirable, but ultimately futile. You should know that yesterday we captured a Fres communication officer who has been far more forthcoming." A lie, Fres Althoff knew. A transparent attempt to make him believe his silence was pointless. If they had truly captured such an officer, they wouldn't need to continue his interrogations. "Your Imperium is losing this war, Commander," Kazan continued, circling his containment chair with measured steps. "The integration of our neo-medieval combat systems has proven more effective than even our most optimistic projections. Your forces have no effective counter to our energy blades, our phase shields, our momentum spears." She paused, studying his reaction. "But you know all this. What you might not know is that we've begun to detect unusual energy signatures from your remaining strongholds. Our analysts believe your leadership is preparing to deploy weapons forbidden by the Galactic Concordat." Despite his resolve, Fres Althoff's outer shell paled slightly. An involuntary reaction he cursed himself for. The Concordat had been established centuries ago, after the Hive Mind Collective had deployed singularity weapons that consumed 3 inhabited star systems. Among its many prohibitions was the use of antimatter weaponry in volumes exceeding 1 gram. The Imperium possessed such weapons, of course. All major powers did, hidden away in secure facilities, theoretically for research purposes only. To actually deploy them would signal a level of desperation Fresaltov had never imagined possible from the high command. "I see this doesn't surprise you," Kazan noted, her eyes narrowing. "So it's true then. Your people are preparing to violate the Concordat, to risk the stability of entire star systems in a futile last stand." Fresaltov remained silent, but his mind raced. If the Imperium was truly considering antimatter weapons, then the war was even more catastrophic than he had imagined. It wasn't just a tactical defeat, it was an existential crisis. "We need to know the location of your antimatter production facilities," Kaza said, her voice hardening. "Not for military advantage, that's already assured, but to prevent a catastrophe that could affect countless innocent species across multiple systems." For the first time in many cycles, Fresaltov broke his silence. "If such weapons exist, I would not know their locations. Such information would be restricted to the High Command and dedicated weapons research divisions." It wasn't entirely a lie. While he had known of the antimatter research program's existence, the specific locations of production facilities had never been shared with field commanders, precisely to prevent such information from being extracted under interrogation. Kazan studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Perhaps, but I believe you know more than you're admitting. We'll continue this discussion tomorrow, with the full neural interface active." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Consider this, Commander. If your Imperium deploys antimatter weapons, we will respond in kind. The resulting conflict would no longer be about territorial control or species dominance. It would be mutual annihilation. Is that really the legacy you wish to preserve with your silence?" With that, she was gone, leaving Fresaltov alone with thoughts more disturbing than any neural stimulation. He was returned to his cell, a space marginally more comfortable than the interrogation chamber, but no less secure. As the hours passed, he found himself considering Kazan's words. Was the Imperium truly preparing to cross that line? And if so, what did it say about the effectiveness of the humans' bizarre combat approach that had driven them to such extreme? Sleep came fitfully, his consciousness cycling between alert and dormant states. In the depths of his rest cycle, a sound penetrated his awareness, distant at first, then rapidly growing in intensity. An explosion. Fresaltov's sensory system snapped to full alertness as the entire facility shuddered. The lights in his cell flickered, then dimmed to emergency level. Another explosion followed, closer this time, and he felt the distinctive vibration pattern of fresh bombardment weapon. Impossible. The Erebus facility was hidden, its location known only to the highest levels of human military command. For the Imperium to have found it. A third explosion rocked the asteroid, and this time, Fresaltov recognized the energetic signature with a chill of dread. Antimatter detonation, though a small one, perhaps a quarter gram, just enough to breach the station's outer defenses without risking the structural integrity of the asteroid itself. The Imperium had not only located the facility, but had committed to using forbidden weapons to breach it. This wasn't a rescue mission, it was a desperate gambit by a losing power. The cell door mechanism failed as power fluctuations cascaded through the station's systems. With a soft hiss, the door slid partially open, then stuck. Fresaltov approached cautiously, his military training overriding months of conditioned compliance. The gap was narrow but sufficient for his compact fresh form to squeeze through. The corridor outside was bathed in the red glow of emergency lighting. Alarm klaxons wailed in the distance, and he could hear the distinctive sounds of human boots on metal flooring as security personnel rushed to defensive positions. Fresaltov hesitated. He had no weapons, no armor, no communication devices. Even if he could somehow reach the Imperium forces, what would await him? Execution for his surrender on Tarsus IV? Interrogation by Fresh intelligence to determine how much information he had revealed? But the alternative, remaining a prisoner as antimatter weapons were deployed against the facility, was unthinkable. He moved cautiously down the corridor, away from the sounds of human activity. His knowledge of the station's layout was limited to the routes between his cell, the interrogation chamber, and the medical facility, where they occasionally took him for physiological assessments. But Fress had evolved as prey species before developing intelligence and technology. The instinct for finding escape routes was deeply embedded in their psychology. Another explosion, this one inside the station itself. The floor beneath him buckled and emergency bulkheads began to slam shut throughout the corridor network. Fress Althoff increased his pace, moving as quickly as his weakened body would allow. He rounded a corner and froze. A human security team was establishing a defensive position at a junction ahead, setting up portable energy barriers and distributing weapons. Among them was a figure that made Fress Althoff's circulation fluids run cold. A warrior in the now familiar heavy armor, a deactivated energy sword at its hip. Fress Althoff backed away silently, seeking an alternative route. As he retreated, he heard a sound that stopped him in his tracks, the distinctive clicking communication of fresh soldiers. He turned to see 3 Fress warriors in full combat carapace emerging from a service tunnel, their weapons trained on the human position ahead. They hadn't noticed him yet, focused entirely on the enemy before them. The humans spotted the Fress soldiers at the same moment. "Contact!" one shouted. "Hostiles at Junction 7. What followed was a brief, brutal exchange of fire. The Fress soldiers were outnumbered, but their weapons, more advanced than anything Fress Althoff had seen during his command, tore through the humans' portable barriers with shocking efficiency. 2 humans fell immediately, their bodies partially disintegrated by concentrated plasma bursts. The remaining humans, wearing nothing more than standard armored vests, returned fire with conventional projectile weapons and handheld plasma rifles. Their determination was admirable, but ultimately futile against the superior Fress technology. One by one, they fell, their fragile bodies no match for weapons designed to penetrate hardened starship hulls. "Advance!" ordered the lead Fress soldier, his carapace displaying the distinctive markings of a raid specialist. "Secure the junction and establish a defensive perimeter." As the soldiers moved forward, Fress Althoff finally revealed himself. Stepping out from his position of concealment, the Fress warriors immediately trained their weapons on him, recognition dawning in their posture. "Commander Fress Althoff?" the lead soldier asked, his shell displaying patterns of confusion. "Intelligence indicated you had been terminated months ago." "Evidently not," Fress Althoff replied, his voice harsh from disuse. "I assume this attack is part of a rescue operation?" The soldiers exchanged subtle, shell-flexing communications before the leader responded. "Negative, Commander. This is a sanctioned strike. Research Station Erebus has been identified as the development center for the humans' energy blade technology. Our mission is its complete destruction." Fress Althoff's sensory apparatus twitched with surprise. "A sanctioned strike? With antimatter weapons? Has the High Command lost all sense of strategic proportion?" "The war situation has deteriorated beyond conventional parameters," the soldier replied, his shell darkening with grim emphasis. "The humans' combat innovations have proven resistant to all standard countermeasures. The High Command has authorized final option protocols." Another explosion shook the facility, this one powerful enough to crack the flooring beneath them. Fress Althoff recognized the distinctive energy signature, antimatter, though a controlled detonation of perhaps a quarter gram. "How many packages have been deployed?" he asked, dreading the answer. 6 strategic locations throughout the facility, plus a 2-gram primary device at the asteroid's core, the leader replied matter-of-factly. "Detonation is set for 15 time units. Your presence is unexpected but fortunate. You will accompany us to the extraction point." Fress Althoff processed this information with mounting horror. Multiple antimatter packages throughout a research facility, plus a core charge large enough to shatter the entire asteroid. Such weapons had been banned by the Galactic Concordant for centuries. For the Imperium to deploy them now spoke of a level of desperation he could scarcely comprehend. "Lead on," he said simply. Whatever awaited him in the Imperium, he would face it alive rather than be atomized in the coming detonation. They moved through the damaged corridors with military precision, encountering scattered groups of human security personnel along the way. Each engagement followed the same pattern: brief, brutal, and utterly one-sided. The fresh weapons cut through human defenses like they weren't there, leaving nothing but charred remains in their wake. Fresh-Altov found himself disturbed by the slaughter. These weren't the sword-wielding warriors that had defeated him on Tarsus IV or decimated the rescue attempt on the transport ship. They were ordinary human soldiers, equipped with standard weapons and armor, dying in droves against superior Fresh technology. It felt wrong somehow. Too easy. "Status report," the lead soldier demanded into his communication device as they reached a major junction. The response came through clearly enough for Fresh-Alt to hear. "Perimeter breached in sectors 3 through 7. Antimatter packages deployed and active in all designated zones. Extraction window closing rapidly. Human resistance heavier than anticipated in the Central Research Wing." Acknowledged. Proceeding to extraction point with recovered asset, they turned down a corridor that Fresh-Altov had never seen during his captivity, wider than the others, with reinforced walls that suggested it led to a vital area of the facility. Warning indicators flashed along its length, and the distant sound of intense combat echoed toward them. "Excretion is through the Central Research Wing?" Fresh-Altov asked incredulously. "Isn't that where resistance is heaviest?" "It's the most direct route to our breach point," the lead soldier explained. "The alternative paths have already been collapsed by our preliminary detonations." As they approached the Central Research Wing, the sounds of battle grew louder, but there was something odd about them. Rather than the chaos of multiple combatants, Fresh-Altov heard what seemed to be a systematic, rhythmic pattern of destruction. They reached an observation gallery overlooking what must have been the main laboratory. The scene below stopped Fresh-Altov cold. Dozens, no, scores of Fresh soldiers lay dead on the laboratory floor, their shells shattered, limbs severed, internal fluids spreading in pools across the sterile surfaces. The sophisticated equipment that must have once filled the space was largely destroyed, much of it apparently used as makeshift weapons against the Fresh attackers. And in the center of this carnage stood a single human figure. The armor was unlike any Fresh-Altov had seen before, clearly military grade, but of a design that seemed to blend form and function in ways that Fresh engineering would never consider. Its surface was severely damaged, with scorch marks and impact craters that indicated it had withstood weapons fire that should have vaporized any normal armor. The alloy composition must have been revolutionary. Even with the damage, it still functioned, still protected its wearer. A tattered red cape hung from the figure's shoulders, the edges singed and torn but somehow adding to the warrior's imposing presence rather than diminishing it. The helmet was fully enclosed, with a visor that glowed red. Likely some form of advanced targeting system or environmental scanner. In the human's hand was a sword, not the energy blades Fresh-Altov had witnessed before, but something more practical yet still deadly. The core appeared to be an advanced metal alloy, with a chemical flame coating the edge, giving it just enough heat to cut through Fresh shells when applied with sufficient force. Engineering, not magic, yet no less lethal for its basis in real physics. "The Texan," whispered one of the Fresh soldiers, his shell paling to a sickly white. "Intelligence said he was off station. This wasn't supposed to be possible." As they watched, another squad of Fresh soldiers burst into the laboratory from an opposite entrance. 6 elite warriors, their weapons already firing as they emerged. This Texan moved with practiced efficiency, not supernatural speed, but the fluid motion of someone who had mastered his craft through years of discipline. He dodged the initial barrage, using the fallen bodies of previous attackers as makeshift cover, then closed the distance before the Fresh soldiers could adjust their aim. The flaming sword slashed through the first attacker's shell, not cleaving it in half as if by magic, but finding the junction points where the carapace was weakest, where fresh physiology was most vulnerable. 3 soldiers fell in quick succession, not from a single superhuman swing, but from calculated strikes to critical systems. The remaining 3 adjusted their tactics, spreading out to surround the human. It was textbook fresh combat doctrine, and it should have worked, but the Texan had clearly studied fresh tactics. He threw something, a small device that erupted in a blinding flash, overloading the fresh visual receptors. In the moment of confusion, he struck, taking down 2 more with precise thrusts to the sensory clusters. The last soldier managed to fire a direct hit, the plasma bolt striking the human's chest plate. The armor absorbed the impact, the advanced material distributing the energy across its surface rather than allowing it to penetrate. The human staggered, but didn't fall. Before the fresh soldier could fire again, the flaming sword found its mark. "We need to retreat," Fresaltov said urgently. "Find another extraction point. We cannot engage that human." The lead soldier's shell displayed conflict, duty warring with survival instinct. "The antimatter packages are set. We have limited time. This route is our only option." "Then we are already dead," Fresaltov stated flatly. "Look at what one human did to over 40 of our best soldiers. Look at the damage to his armor. He's survived antimatter detonations at close range. Everything around him must have been completely destroyed, yet he stands." As if hearing their discussion, the Texan's helmeted head turned upward, the red visor focusing directly on the observation gallery. There was nothing supernatural about it, just a well-trained soldier aware of his surroundings, checking for additional threats. "Go," the lead soldier ordered, already backing away. "Return the way we came. We'll find an alternative route." But it was too late. The Texan had spotted them. With remarkable athleticism, enhanced perhaps by his armor's systems, but not beyond the realm of physical possibility, he leapt to a nearby piece of equipment, used it as a springboard, and caught the edge of the gallery. He pulled himself up with powerful arms, the servos in his damaged armor whining with the effort. The 2 soldiers opened fire immediately, unleashing plasma bursts at point-blank range. The energy struck the human's armor, scorching it further but failing to penetrate its remarkable composition. Before they could adjust their aim, the Texan's flaming sword slashed through the weapon of the first soldier, rendering it useless, then struck at the vulnerable neck seal of the second. Both fresh soldiers fell, not bisected by energy fields that defied physics, but defeated by a combination of superior armor technology and precisely targeted strikes at their weakest point. Then it was just Fresaltov and the Texan. The human stood motionless, sword lowered but still burning with chemical flame. The red glow from his visor was likely an intimidation tactic as much as a functional feature, Fresaltov realized. Psychological warfare integrated into practical design. "Commander Fresaltov," the Texan said, his voice amplified and modulated through his helmet systems, the architect of the Tarsus IV campaign. 7 years of methodical brutality. Atmospheric processors to poison civilian populations. Resonance cannons tuned specifically to shatter human bone. Fresaltov remained silent, knowing any response would be inadequate. "You've been studying our combat technology during your captivity here. The text Dr. Kazan's reports indicate you've been most resistant to sharing fresh military information. Yet your insights on our neo-medieval combat systems have proven valuable nonetheless." This was news to Fresaltov. He had revealed nothing intentionally, but perhaps his reactions during interrogation, his physiological responses to certain stimuli, had provided information he hadn't realized he was giving. "Your people have deployed antimatter weapons throughout this facility," the Texan stated. Not a question, but a conflict, beyond our current conflict. "The Imperium," Fresaltov began, then paused, uncertain what he could say that wouldn't sound like either treason or propaganda. "The Imperium is losing," the Texan finished for him. A deafening explosion cut through their conversation, so powerful it sent tremors through the entire section. Warning lights shifted from red to critical purple. The Texan's helmet snapped toward the source of the disturbance, the red visor gleaming. "Orbital bombardment," he said, his modulated voice betraying a hint of surprise. "Your people are desperate." The facility's intercom crackled to life. "Alert, alert, massive Fress invasion force detected. All personnel evacuate to emergency shelters immediately. This is not a drill." Through the observation window, Fress Altov could see what looked like a continuous rain of drop pods smashing through the asteroid's surface defenses, each containing squads of elite Fress soldiers. The Imperium wasn't just attacking the facility. They were committing an entire battalion to its destruction. "Thousands," he whispered, his shell paling. "They've said thousands?" The Texan checked something on his wrist display, then rolled his shoulders as if preparing for a workout rather than facing an army. "It's 3712 to be precise, according to my suit's scanners." Before Fress Altov could respond, the bulkhead at the far end of the laboratory exploded inward. Through the smoke and debris poured a wave of fresh shock troops, at least 50 of them, armed with the latest assault weapons. Their shells displayed the distinctive color patterns of the Imperium's Void Killers, elite soldiers trained specifically for space station assaults. "Behind me," the Texan ordered, stepping forward to place himself between Fress Altov and the approaching soldiers. "Or run. Your choice." The lead Fress commander spotted them and chittered an order. As one, the entire squad opened fire, filling the air with plasma bolts and disruptor beams. The energy output was enough to melt through battleship armor. The Texan didn't dodge. Instead, he activated something on his gauntlet, and a shimmering field sprang to life around him. Not a conventional energy shield, but something more sophisticated. The incoming fire struck the field and seemed to curve around it, the energy redirected rather than absorbed. Deflection technology, Fress Altov realized, not absorption. The Texan drew his flame-tipped sword in one smooth motion and charged. He moved not with superhuman speed, but with practiced efficiency, each step calculated, each movement serving a purpose. The first rank of Fress soldiers adjusted their aim, tracking his approach. Their fire intensified, concentrated on a single point, a proven tactic against shielded opponents. For a moment the deflection field faltered, allowing a plasma bolt through. It struck the Texan's shoulder armor, charring it further but failing to penetrate. Without breaking stride, the human reached the front line. His sword, a marvel of material science rather than magic, slashed through the weapon of the first soldier, rendering it useless. The return stroke found the gap between carapace plates, sending the fresh warrior crumpling to the ground. The second and third fell just as quickly, the Texan's combat style a brutal economization of movement. He didn't waste energy on elaborate maneuvers, didn't showboat or hesitate. Each strike disabled or killed. The Fress soldiers adapted quickly, spreading out to surround him, some falling back to gain firing distance while others moved in with shock batons designed for close-quarter combat. It was textbook Fress military doctrine, executed with the precision of elite troops. The Texan responded by reaching to his belt and throwing several small devices into the midst of the soldiers. They detonated with concussive force, not powerful enough to kill through hardened Fress shells, but sufficient to disrupt formation and sensory functions. In the moment of confusion, the human struck again, his sword finding vulnerable points that most non-Fress wouldn't even know existed. 6 more soldiers fell in as many seconds, but the Void Killers were the best the Imperium had to offer. They regrouped quickly, and one officer recognized the threat posed by the Texan's deflection field. He signaled to a heavy weapons specialist, who shouldered a weapon Fress Altov had never seen before, larger than standard issue, with cooling vanes along its barrel. Energy modulator, Fress Altov realized with horror. A weapon designed to cycle through frequencies until it found one that could penetrate shields or barriers. The specialist fired, and a stream of rapidly shifting energy patterns struck the Texan's deflection field. For a moment, the field held. Then, as the weapon found the correct frequency, the barrier flickered and failed. A cheer went up from the Fress soldiers, their shells flushing with triumph. The Texan was now vulnerable, his armor advanced but not impervious. But the human had anticipated this. As his field collapsed, he was already moving, diving behind a massive piece of laboratory equipment. The fresh fire followed him, tearing into the machinery and sending sparks flying. "Ow!" the Texan shouted, though Fres Althoff couldn't tell who he was addressing. A moment later, the laboratory's environmental systems surged. Emergency fire suppression chemicals flooded the chamber, not the standard fire retardant, but something else. A dense, opaque fog that rapidly reduced visibility to zero. The fresh soldiers' reaction was immediate and disciplined. They activated thermal vision systems built into their combat shells, allowing them to see through the fog by detecting heat signatures. "Find the human," ordered the squad leader. "He cannot escape." But as they scanned the room, confusion spread through their ranks. The fog wasn't just obscuring visual light, it was somehow masking thermal signatures as well. Specialized compounds in the mist must have been designed to absorb and disperse heat energy. From somewhere in the fog came a mechanical sound, the whir of servos and the click of metal components locking into place. When the Texan's voice came again, it had changed. No longer amplified through his helmet, but now transmitted directly into the auditory receptors of every fresh soldier in the room. "Your thermal systems rely on detecting a specific range of infrared radiation," the voice explained calmly, as if delivering a lecture rather than fighting for his life. "My armor can operate outside that range. One of many adaptations we've made since studying your biology." A flash of movement from the left. A fresh soldier screamed as the flaming sword emerged from the fog, severed his weapon arm, then disappeared again before the others could target its source. Another movement, this time from the right. 2 more soldiers fell, their shells breached with surgical precision. The squad leader recognized the danger. "Tight formation, back to back, no gaps." The remaining soldiers complied, forming a defensive circle, weapons pointed outward. It was the correct tactical response, eliminating blind spots and maximizing coverage. Against any normal opponent, it would have been effective. The Texan wasn't a normal opponent. Something small and cylindrical rolled into the center of their formation. Before they could react, it detonated. Not with explosive force, but with an electromagnetic pulse calibrated specifically to disrupt fresh neural systems. The soldiers staggered, their coordination temporarily shattered. The Texan struck then, emerging from the fog like a nightmare. His sword was no longer aflame, the chemicals apparently exhausted, but the blade itself was still lethal, finding the vulnerable connection points between shell segments where fresh nervous systems were closest to the surface. 12 seconds. That was all it took for half the remaining squad to fall. Not through superhuman abilities or magical weapons, but through meticulous preparation, advanced technology, and intimate knowledge of Frez physiology. The squad leader, seeing the situation deteriorating, made a desperate decision. He activated his emergency beacon, a signal that would bring an orbital strike down on their position. "What are you doing?" Fres Althoff shouted, finally breaking his stunned silence. "You'll kill everyone here, including our own forces." "Better death than defeat," the leader replied, the traditional Fres military credo. Through the thinning fog, Fres Althoff saw the Texan register the threat. The human's helmet tilted slightly. Then he reached for something at his belt, a small device that he aimed at the squad leader. A dart shot out, striking the Fres officer in the neck seal of his combat shell. The leader collapsed immediately, the neurotoxin working with frightening speed. But it was too late. The beacon had been activated. "Impact in 20 seconds, announced the facility's AI in an unnervingly calm voice. "All personnel seek immediate shelter." The remaining fresh soldiers, recognizing their leader's sacrifice, renewed their attack on the Texan with suicidal determination. They would die here, but they would take the human with them. The Texan seemed to recognize the futility of continuing the fight. He glanced at Fres Althoff, then at the laboratory's far exit. "Run," he said simply, no longer using the modulated voice but his natural one, transmitted through his helmet's speakers. "Corridor C, 3rd junction, emergency pods, you have 15 seconds." Fres Althoff didn't need to be told twice. Self-preservation overrode everything else, and he turned and fled through the exit. his smaller size allowing him to move quickly through the damaged sections of the facility. Behind him, he heard the sounds of continued combat, the fresh soldiers still trying to overwhelm the Texan, the humans still fighting with remarkable efficiency. Then came the teeth-rattling vibration of the orbital strike penetrating the asteroid's surface. Fres Althoff ran faster, his military training taking over as he navigated the unfamiliar corridors. Corridor C, third junction. He found it and turned, seeing a row of small emergency escape pods at the end of the passage. Just as he reached them, the orbital strike hit. The entire facility seemed to lift and then settle, the asteroid's mass absorbing some of the energy but not enough. Structural integrity alarms blared from every direction. Atmosphere began venting through newly formed breaches. Fres Althoff dove into the nearest pod, sealed the hatch, and activated the launch sequence. As the small vessel detached from the dying research station, he caught a glimpse through the viewport of the devastation behind him. The orbital strike had punched a massive hole through multiple levels of the facility, exposing the interior to space. But incredibly, impossibly, a figure in damaged armor was still fighting in the depressurizing laboratory. The Texan hadn't fled. He stood in the center of the ruined space, his armor apparently providing sufficient protection against vacuum, still engaged with the remaining fresh soldiers who had sealed their combat shells against the decompression. The pod's thrusters fired, carrying Fres Althoff away from the doomed research station. On the tactical display, he could see the extent of the Fres invasion, drop pods everywhere, shuttles docking at every available port, and in orbit the massive silhouette of the carrier Implacable Doctrine. Thousands of soldiers, an orbital bombardment, and antimatter weapons deployed throughout the facility, all to eliminate one human and his research. As his pod accelerated toward the waiting Fres fleet, Fres Althoff couldn't help but wonder if even that would be enough. Thousands against one, and based on what he had witnessed, he wasn't certain which side he would bet on. Thank you for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave this video a like and subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. Video shares, memberships, and super thanks help the channel grow as well, so feel free to partner with this channel in that way as we grow. With that all said, thank you again for listening to the story, and thank you for your time. On the left side of your screen are some videos I think you might be interested in. I hope to see you in the next one.